Well, hey there, Diet Disruptors. Carrie here. And on today's episode, we have for us somebody that has a topic near and dear to my heart, and so many of you as well. Welcome, the menopause doula. I mean,
Yes.
that is the best title I've ever heard for anybody who works with women. Welcome, Mary Lee. She is a menopause doula. I'll let you describe what that exactly means.
Absolutely. First of all, it's awesome to be here on your show, Carrie. And so, a menopause doula. So, doula is a Greek term meaning woman who serves. We serve women through birthing, and now they have death doulas, but
Mhm.
menopause. And why do we need a menopause doula? It's like something we're going to go through anyway. But let's just face it, none of us knew from our mothers what the hell was going to happen to our bodies going through menopause. It's very confusing, and the medical field is not necessarily on board with that. There's a true lack of education. So a doula comes in and fills that gap, that void in the medical profession, in the healthcare profession, as well as we're there just to hold space with women who just want to sit and talk and say, man, this is what I'm going through. And then just help them navigate through the changes, set their goals for the future, and then help them stick to it, like a cheerleader in the corner,
I,
that
I love
coach.
that because this isn't something to dread. And while it can be hard for people. I also know as somebody
Mhm.
that went through menopause at 46 and didn't
Mhm.
actually know she was going through menopause. I know it doesn't have to be awful. And there's so many different things that we can do to make it a time in our lives that actually is something to celebrate, to have a cheerleader for, to help us to be able to get through it. And my best friend is a birthing doula. And I'm so fascinated and intrigued by the term of saying that doula isn't just about birth. It's almost like in some ways we associate birth and doula, but it's almost like a rebirth in a variety of ways, whether you're a
Yes.
menopause doula or a death doula, right? Like there's a whole new stage of our existence that we are going through. So I'm so excited that there are people like you that do this. But here's the other reason why you and I are so connected and why I love that you are on my show right now, because you too have a podcast. And we actually met
Yes.
because I was a guest on your podcast.
That's
But I
right.
need
Yes.
you to tell all of our diet disruptors who are listening what the name of your podcast is.
Well, I just went through a recent rebranding from all things menopausal, which was to
and
the menopause disruptor.
and
And
that
all
had
of
nothing to do
us,
with me. That was
no,
totally coincidental.
it was churning in my head prior to you and I sitting down, which wasn't that long ago. And then shortly after our interview, I had gone to a trade show just to showcase my business and that yes, there's a doula out there and this is what she does. But as women were coming up to my booth and talking, the stories I heard were so disheartening about being gaslit, dismissed, outright ignored, no support. They're confused, being told things like, oh, you don't need HRT, menopause hormone therapy, if your husband is still, you know, wants to have sex with you, you have to stay on birth control. The whole patriarchy, just the things I heard, you're obese, lose weight, basically saying to the woman, you don't matter and it's your fault, the blame
Yes.
and the shame. And I was so pissed off. I came home, I sat down and had an epiphany, and I said, I got to disrupt this narrative. I have to join the ranks of other women in this field, professionals, experts, and really disrupt this and destigmatize. No words. No, this is a
Destigmatize.
menopause.
Yes.
Destigmatize. This is a byproduct of menopause. um, the narrative and help women feel empowered and so that they can advocate for their own health.
I love
and
it.
and that's why I needed the name change, and also because the guests that I've had on my show for the last year have really been disrupting it by giving us credible information, relevant information, such as
Hmm.
yourself, the way that we need to think about how we treat our bodies, how we look at menopause, how we eat for our changing bodies,
Hmm.
and we'll get into that, of course, in this
Hmm.
podcast. And so it was time to change the name. And since I did that, my listenership has gone up
That's amazing.
substantially.
I love that. And that's what we have to be doing. We have to start disrupting the narrative that we have just been taught as fact and as truth when it comes to our value, our worth, our understanding of food, our relationship with our
Mhm.
body. And menopause is a part of this
Yes,
relationship. And we can, just like any relationship, like our body is here to support us and to do all these things to be able to allow us to live a long, healthy life. And we can keep fighting it or we can start working with it. And I love that we are just working together in different sides of the equation to be able to disrupt the narrative that we've been told. So, as we're talking, we're in the holiday season and it doesn't really even matter
yeah,
whether it's the holidays or another season. There's always something coming up in our lives that throws
that's
us a
right.
curveball, that convinces us we can't show up for ourselves. I just recently had somebody that had booked a call with our team, and then her father had passed away
Oh
a couple
dear.
weeks before, and it was awful, right? But the
Hmm.
first thing was, I have to cancel my call. My father passed away a couple of weeks ago. And I thought, I understand you're grieving, and I don't ever want to take that away from you. But our norm is that we have to put everything about us on hold to be able to hold space for everybody else, to be able to put everyone else
Yes,
together. And if we aren't still learning how to show up for ourselves, then everything that happens in life will always continue to derail us. And
that's right.
so let's get us into, like, we're focusing on the holidays right now because that's the season that we're in. But if you're listening to this podcast at any time of the year, just recognize that, all of these
Yeah,
things are going to be relevant in any chaotic time in our
that's
lives.
true.
But we
Yeah.
use the holidays often as an excuse.
Yeah, it's like a time to let go and just, be merry,
Yeah.
drink and be merry.
I keep
But the
saying there is no more joy, peace, or happiness than feeling confident and strong, knowledgeable, and showing up for yourself. And trust me, I still have the eggnog and the Christmas cookies, right? But it's about understanding how to really be true to you while
yeah,
still be celebrating. So let's talk about the holidays. Let's talk about menopause. I know that this is totally your bread and butter.
yeah.
Gluten or no gluten.
And I continue to learn when I have experts come on the field, or there's another book that comes out on the shelf. And let me just say right now is that there's so much coming out right now. There's just been this supercharge of menopausal discussion, washing. Everything is labeled menopause because it's
Hmm.
it's a ripe topic,
Yeah.
and because women, as the biggest consumers, are just soaking it all in. So let's just slap some menopause language on top of that. But this is where discernment comes in, because some of the information that's coming out there and the supplements, we have to be really careful,
Hmm.
uh, because we can end up spending hundreds of thousands of dollars looking for that best cure,
Yeah.
looking
The
for that
magic
next
pill.
quick fix, the magic pill, as you say, the snake oil, right?
Hmm.
So I will say that we have in our own capability to tap into that inner wisdom. We have the ability to heal. We have the ability to take control of our bodies. Menopause symptoms is a way of the body screaming at us saying, we need to address this. If you haven't done it your whole life, menopause is an invitation, which is why it should be conceived as something more celebratory. What is with my words today? Cannot form my words.
We
Something to
totally get
celebrate.
it. We get it. We are never about perfection around here.
Oh gosh, no. But
Hmm.
it's something to welcome and to celebrate, because it's an opportunity to birth a second spring.
Oh, I love what you just said around the invitation. It's an invitation to start listening to your body. When I think about hormonal imbalances and cravings and weight gain and hot flashes or any of the things that we blame on menopause, I just keep saying it's like the check engine light of your car in your
Yeah.
body. And we just keep like I just keep seeing like hashtag F menopause. And it makes me so sad because it's gonna happen. It's part of what we're doing. Why are we saying go F
Yeah.
off? I'm saying, like, in a way, like, bring it on. Like, this change means a whole lot of really incredible things for my life.
It does. And to slough it off humorously is a coping mechanism for
Mm,
sure. But underneath that, there's one of two things. Either you've got a good grip on it and you're just sloughing it because it's funny,
mm,
or you completely want to dissolve all responsibility and
mm.
hand it over again to the medical system and say, I'm in a new phase in my life. I don't know what to do. Help me, and not
Oh,
take that
yes.
responsibility.
And we've done that with the diet industry, right? Just tell me
Yes.
what to eat without learning how to fly our own plane. Just, I'm going to sit in the passenger seat and no wonder I'm like not landing where I'm supposed to land. It's time to get in the cockpit. So
Yeah. Tell me
let's
how I'm
get in
supposed to
there.
look. Tell me
Yeah.
how I'm supposed to behave.
Yes.
Tell me, tell me, tell me. But menopause is like, okay, this is a time of the great reveal, an Ayurvedic philosophy. It's also an Ayurvedic philosophy is that it's the age of wisdom. So let's
Mm,
step into that wisdom and embrace all of our experiences, the good, the bad, the ugly, but
mm.
embrace them and understand that this has shaped who we are today. And we have an opportunity to step in such great wisdom. And to do that, we need knowledge, because knowledge is power. We hear that often,
Yes.
but the application of that knowledge, that's wisdom. And so if we have not been treating our bodies properly, that's not being wise. It's an opportunity to now to say, I have an opportunity to really listen, to go deep. And I like to think that, we've lived in the sacral chakra, the lower chakras, for so long, because our main purpose, and whether you have children or not, is that biologically we were designed to reproduce.
Hmm.
But when that role ends, we step into a new role, and that's the role of wise women, leaning
Mm,
into our intuition. So we rise our energy up into what I like to say is the third eye. So we're rising our energy up. We're no longer needing to stay in the small self, serving others, whether it's parenthood, career, whatever the role might be. It's an opportunity now to step into the role of who we are, finding new purpose.
oh, I
But to
love
do that,
that.
we need to be of sharp mind, of good health, and the body's going to shift. There's nothing we can do about it, in terms of not liking how there's changes happening to our body. That's a biological process of aging.
Hmm. Hmm.
So it's welcoming those changes, but at the same time still being able to influence it. And I think of that in terms of, how can I influence the changing in my body so that I'm still set up for success? So
Yes.
addressing muscle loss,
Yes.
addressing bone density loss, addressing cognitive health, heart health. I mean, cardiovascular disease is still the leading cause of death in women, not breast cancer.
Hmm.
And yet the medical field has led us to believe that cancer, breast cancer, HRT is bad, breast cancer, if your
Hmm.
family history, if you've had it. But
Hmm.
this is completely wrong, because it's not the right information that we've been receiving. Why? Because of, well, the ghosts of the Women's Health
Hmm.
Initiative in 2001, 2002, when it was abruptly halted. And so that led to some misinformation, and that just carried on. Well, subsequent research has told us that estrogen, for example, is very good. It can help with our
Hmm.
cognitive health.
Yep.
It can help with heart health. Not to say that HRT is the panacea, because it is not actually. Our first protocol should always be lifestyle. But
Hmm.
nevertheless, it's a demonstration that research is science marches on. Research is revealing to us that there's so much more information that we've been lacking. Our medical practitioners need to catch up, because
Yes.
menopause is not part of their primary curriculum.
Right.
It's maybe a lecture, maybe an hour.
Yep.
And that is why advocating for ourselves and being empowered with knowledge is job number one for a doula.
Oh, I love that because you're able to educate. And that's such a big piece of the puzzle for all of us is this education versus, you know, rub some dirt on it, as my husband would say to my kids when they had a cut. Like we're just rubbing dirt on stuff and we're not actually healing. So many things that you're saying just resonate in terms of wisdom. I
Mm.
get it that our bodies are changing and so many times we look at that person or that body that we had when we were younger. But I think I wouldn't trade my wiser self today for that naive, ego driven girl
Yeah.
that was me when I was in my 20s.
Yeah.
And like the wisdom is what our grandkids want and appreciate. They're what our adult kids need. And especially as we go into the holidays, when you think about holiday memories, right? Like I think about my grandmother and the way that she made the moment so special. And it was the opportunity for wisdom to be taught during those times of the year.
Yeah. I I was just about to say, we think about a wise woman and we envision this gray-haired, maybe our grandmother.
Hmm.
And what do they look like? We don't look at them in their body shape and their size. Oftentimes they're just kind of like soft, round balls of goodness and love and happiness. It's because it's that energy that we feed off of.
Yes.
And they are standing in their place as the matriarchy, feeling like I have arrived.
Hmm.
And we lean into that energy, and they can, like you said, make the holidays so wonderful and special because they embrace their whole entire life. They embrace their wisdom, but more so, I think they embrace the role that they step into
Hmm.
as maybe the matriarchy to bring so much more knowledge and wisdom to the rest of the family, to their
Love it.
offsprings.
Yes.
Um, and so when we can, and this is some of the work I like to do as a doula when I'm coaching one-on-one, is the first thing that we sit down to do is a little bit of self-reflection, looking at your 7-year-old self and what would you tell her? And
Mm,
then vision casting to say, okay, where do you want to be in the future? What are your goals? Listing
mm.
about 10 values from a bunch of value statements, and then whittling that down to 5 and then to 3. And then from there, make a vision statement. I
Oh,
want to be healthy and strong and live a long life so I can watch my grandkids grow up. All
right.
right. Perfect. Let's work backwards from there. What do you need to do in order to achieve that vision for yourself? And
Mm,
then we get to work. We get to work on those SMART goals so that they can start planning their future basically and to step into that
yes.
greatness, step into that wisdom.
And what you're making me think about is while there has to be some acceptance that we are getting older and that comes with certain changes that are going to be inevitable around our body and mobility and maybe weight and a variety of things, our skin and all of that. That acceptance is real and important. And there's also this, I mean, I've talked to so many women that are just like, I give up. I give up. I'm tired of chasing. I'm tired of going around this hamster wheel because what so many women think of is restriction
Mm,
and dieting is what they're supposed to
mhm,
do. And
mhm.
if not, then it's just giving up, letting go, and then just becoming like this truly unhealthy person. We don't realize that there's actually something in between both of those things. And while we do need to accept what our body is
Yeah.
doing, we also need to show up for ourselves so that we can age as not even, I don't even want to say age gracefully. I want to say like age powerfully and with
Yes.
strength. So let's talk a little bit about that because that acceptance is real, but you also teach women how to show up for themselves differently so that they don't just accept the status quo. There's a difference between accepting your body and the aging and then just accepting like a feeling of defeat with your body. So,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. Very good point. And I would say the first thing that came to my mind when you told me you hear that, like women saying, I just give up.
Mhm.
And that is one of the things I say that my mission is to ensure that women are empowered so they don't give up on
Mm.
themselves, on their careers, on their jobs, on their life. Unfortunately, one of the highest suicide rates um, for the populace, the demographic is women in
Mhm.
their late 40s to 50s. And why
Mhm.
is that? Because of that give up mindset.
Yeah.
Our ego mind has hung itself so much on the way it looks on the outside. So when I say, rather than give up, how about I surrender? I
Mm.
surrender into the flow of this change
Oh, I
so
love
that I
that.
can
What a different
embrace.
way of framing I give up.
I surrender.
Surrender takes strength.
and vulnerability and bravery. Brene Brown talks about that all the time,
Mhm.
is to be courageous, is to be vulnerable and to surrender to what is next. When you shift that mindset, and that's one of the hardest jobs in coaching, is that they're just stuck in this old mindset. But when you can shift that mindset, suddenly they're open up to the possibility that they are in control.
Mhm.
You're not alone. I'm willing to surrender to the next best thing for me because I know it's out there and I'm in control. And it's
Mhm.
okay, let's get to work because the
Yes.
answer is actually within you. And that's when we get into those protocols
So let's talk a
of,
little bit about those protocols. What does that actually mean and look like?
well, so for example, we hear all the time is that menopause is the hot flashes and the night
Right.
sweats.
Right.
And that is one of the biggest complaints. It's among the top five of what we feel, and the fatigue. Well, what is that body telling you when you, or those signals telling you,
Mhm.
is that the body's out of dysregulation.
Mhm.
It's out of homeostasis, and hormone fluctuations and estrogen egress will put the body out of homeostasis.
Mhm.
So the body is fighting to find a new balance. And so when we have those symptoms, it's quite often the body is saying, something's not right here. We need to change. So then we start looking at lifestyle.
Mhm.
Number one thing, though, is our food. Our
Amen, sister.
food, yes, our food fuels our gut. The gut microbiome is going to shift with the estrogen changes
Mhm.
because they're now considering that the gut is now being looked at. And I'm not a gut specialist, but from the work that I've been doing, the research and in our presentation packages with the menopause expert group, for which I have a license to provide education, we're starting to understand that the gut is in itself plays such a more important role in estrogen modulation and hormone modulation. And so we have our good bacteria and we have our bad bacteria.
Mhm.
And so our food choices can either feed the good or feed the bad.
Mhm.
And when we continue to feed the bad bacteria, and sometimes we're doing it mindlessly and don't even realize it,
Mhm.
again, because we grew up with this mindset that calories count. So if we keep our calories to an absolute minimum, but
Ugh.
we're doing so much damage.
Mhm.
So when we look at food, what is it that we need to fuel our bodies efficiently? And I always work on the protein first and foremost. And of course, we
Mhm.
know that the carbohydrates and the fats are equally as important.
Mhm.
But one of the reasons why I'd like to address protein first is because we have muscle mass loss starts at about age 40 and
Mhm.
continues. And we need to fuel our muscles more metabolically active. So we want to be metabolically active, and that's good for our heart health. Protein also helps us stay full longer. Now, when it comes to the holidays, it's like, I'm gonna skip breakfast, I'm gonna skip lunch, I'm going to this buffet, this office
Yes.
party tonight.
Ugh.
So if I just eliminate all food intake during the day, then I'll go to that buffet and I'll eat and I'll get my calories and I'm fine. And I've done fasting all day because I haven't eaten anything. Well, that is completely the wrong mentality. Our bodies need protein, a slow drip all day long, which is why it's recommended 30 to 35 grams with a meal and 15 to 20 with a snack. And if you're active, if you work out quite aggressively, you need to, well, I wouldn't even say aggressively, but are very active, you're going to need to up that protein
Mhm.
intake. But
Mhm.
that is about the standard is 30 and 15 with snacks. 30 with meals. So, but you need that slow drip because it helps you stay satiated longer during the day. So you feel full longer. So you don't cave to those cravings. And then once you hit those cravings, the mind just says, give me something. Well, the brain is also saying, I need fuel. I need something. The gut is saying, give me something. And we reach for the sugary treats, the
Yes.
high processed foods, the meats and all the cured meats on those platters. So we reach for something that's easily accessible because by the time you're going to this buffet, you're starving. But,
Yes.
or even
Yes.
if you don't feel starving, your body is, you're starting to bonk.
And let's be
cognitive
honest, if you
function.
haven't fed yourself all day and you don't feel it, that's telling you something too about your metabolic health and about why your body is out of whack because you're not speaking to each other. You
You're
shouldn't be
not
able to
speaking
go
to each
all
other.
day and not feel hungry.
Yeah. And that's a good point because the gut and the brain are speaking to each other
Hmm.
all day long, whether we're consciously aware of it or not. It is talking to each other. And so it's going to be sending you signals. And if you're paying attention, you're going to understand your body that much more. But if you've mentally checked out because this has been your pattern for years and years and years, and I'm just going to plug through it, I can train myself to plug through those signals. You're mentally checked out. You're doing
Yep.
your body more harm. The
Yes.
gut bacteria needs to be fed all day long because the gut bacteria, they're like millions and trillions of our little guardian angels, if you want to think about it that way. All those trillions of bacteria in the gut is performing all the functions in the body, the
Yep.
endocrine system, the
Yep.
circulatory system, the respiratory system. So let's flip it on its head and say, wouldn't I want to set my systems up for success? And then go back to the vision again. Where do
Yes.
I want
I
to be?
I love that you started with that vision because it's the why behind what we're doing. A lot of the times people were
Yes.
like, if I have all that protein, I see it all the time on the TikTok coaching and the Instagram coaching around have more protein, you'll lose weight. And what you're saying is have more protein because you need to have this for your bone density. You need to have this for your muscle mass. You need to have this for your homeostasis. You need to have this for your gut. You need to have this so
Yeah.
you can go and actually implement the vision that you said. Does weight loss
Yes.
often become a byproduct of fueling your body correctly? Yes. More protein is going to help balance your blood sugar. Yes, all of that helps, but
Yes.
your why cannot be around weight loss.
That's true.
So I
It
love that you're
can't.
bringing
Yeah.
it back to the vision.
Yeah. Whatever shift happens in the body physically should be secondary to what
Yes.
you need to do to fuel it internally so that you can show up optimally.
Oh, I
Brain
love
fog. I
that.
mean, if you're in the workplace and you're suffering brain fog and fatigue and um, just mentally not able to perform like you used to, yeah, we blame it on menopause, but it's because there's things shifting in the gut microbiome as well that we are not optimally performing. And of
Hmm.
course, when you're not fueling your gut properly, you're not eating properly, the fallout is it's going to impact your sleep.
Hmm. Yes,
And then
ma'am.
the sleep is the absolute panacea, I would say, for everything that rest and digest. What is the body can repair during our sleep and can only do in our sleep is so essential. So if you're not giving yourself that, setting yourself up for success for a good sleep habits, then you're just in this constant vicious cycle,
Yeah, you can't
always
sleep because
chasing.
you're not eating appropriately and you're not eating appropriately because either you're, stuck in this mindset of the deficit or you're just running around having more processed foods than you should be and then all of it is connected and therefore then
It
welcome
is. It
menopausal nightmare.
And that's another good point is all of it is connected. And honestly, women are wise, but sometimes they don't understand that connection between our
Hmm.
food. So when I start breaking it down and getting into more of the
Well, our
sciencey
doctors don't tell
stuff,
us about the connection with
well,
our
the
food.
doctors,
So,
yeah, instead they just say go lose weight.
yes,
But
eat less,
you
move
know,
more. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but there's a whole other, and this is the things that we can't control. Is naturally is I shouldn't say we can't control. It's going to happen
Hmm.
naturally.
Hmm.
You need to respond to it effectively. Cortisol
Yes.
levels are going to rise.
Hmm.
Cortisol is a stress hormone.
Hmm.
When the body is at a homeostasis, because naturally of entering into menopause and the hormonal shifts, cortisol levels are going to rise because the body's saying, oh my goodness, what is happening?
Hmm.
I'm not functioning the same way I used to be.
Hmm.
And so cortisol levels will naturally kick in. That spikes. Cortisol loves bad bacteria and it just fuels bacteria. Cortisol also will take our sugar out of our fats, not our glucose. It burns glucose from, or sorry, I always get this wrong. it robs it from our muscles first
Yep.
and not our fats. And we
Yep.
wish it would be the opposite way.
Yep.
And that's called the cortisol steal.
Yeah, and
So
that's
as
why
you
we
start,
see on continuous glucose monitoring the impact
yeah,
of cortisol spikes on our glucose monitor. And it's so fascinating. A whole nother reason why protein matters too, because that can help mitigate some of those. And it's so funny because when we have people eating in the way where you talk about that slow drip of protein, right? It's
yeah,
amazing how they're like, I just, my like anxiety, my depression, because that level of cortisol that is just sitting and wreaking havoc on our gut and our hormones can actually be mitigated when you're fueling it with clean, whole, unprocessed foods and especially protein.
yes, yeah. But of course, and you speak to this all the time, and it makes sense. We also need our high fiber foods like our
Hmm.
vegetables,
Yes.
because fiber supports digestion, it supports hormone balance, prevents issues like constipation. I mean, what makes a woman more miserable over the holidays than being constipated?
Right.
You know,
Right.
so
Right.
very important. So, a couple of hard-boiled eggs for breakfast in the morning, great, but chase it down with maybe some berries
Yes.
or yeah.
Yes. And
So
what you're saying to me too is, or saying to us is like, this idea of the holidays is all or nothing. It doesn't really make sense because the holidays are still many, many days. And you're not baking Christmas cookies and at Christmas parties for the majority of the holiday. It's just that you probably have more than you do during the
yeah.
rest of the year. But we have plenty of opportunities to fuel our bodies in a way that serves them and still be able to partake in the things that are, either festive or cultural around the holidays. Wouldn't you agree?
I would absolutely agree. Honestly, I see that the holidays can be in some for many of us, it can be an emotional time.
Hmm.
And of course, emotional eating can kick in. But if you recognize too that the holidays are an opportunity to come together, look at it not necessarily coming together around the food, but coming together around the table in terms of connectedness with family, connectedness with each
Yes.
other. You want to
Yes.
show up at the table as, you know, fully engaged to be a part of that experience. And when you put,
Yes.
I want the holidays to be a wonderful experience, you start to realize, okay, again, going back to that mission statement, how do I show up? How do I set myself up for success so I can
Yes.
really be a part of, be present in this time of celebrating together?
Oh, I
Um,
love that. And
yeah,
at the end of the day, the holidays happen every year. So we've got to figure this out. We have to
we've
stop
got to figure
pretending.
this out.
It's like
That's
all the
right.
holidays here. I have to like shut everything off. But like what you're making me think about as you talk is being clear-headed to also remember and cherish these moments. Because as my kids are in college now, when they come home, I am like trying to clear my calendar because it's so precious that they're here. And I think about that with the food that we're eating. Like,
Yeah.
enjoy every moment of it because you're not doing that all the time. And like, I think about alcohol. I love wine, but so many times we
Mm,
think we should, like, it's just a natural part of what we do in the holidays. And if
mhm.
you're wanting to be clear headed, if you're wanting to really enjoy every moment with your family that you know is precious, because if you're in menopause, you likely have older kids and you know that they're not coming around all the time, then,
Yeah.
I've really like thought much more about the fact that I love having a night with my family that I'm not like tired because I've had a glass of wine
Yeah.
or not fully like I don't get the best night's sleep when I have wine in there. And so almost rethinking according to your vision statement that I love, how do we really embrace this time and being clear-headed? And then alcohol is another conversation to just be really thoughtful about.
Yeah. If eventually we could get to the point where alcohol, caffeine, that one's a hard one for me, and sugar is completely eliminated from our body, we'd be so much more healthier in the long run.
Yeah.
But if we can break it down and look at it, the substance in itself in terms of what it's doing to our body, thinking about the vision statement of showing up for our
Hmm.
best selves. And then we look at things that tend to be on the rise during the holidays, alcohol.
Yeah.
All the dinners we go to, the parties,
Yep.
and alcohol is at the forefront. It's almost as though you need to mentally prepare yourself before you go
Mm-hmm.
to the event to tell yourself, okay, what is alcohol going to do?
Mm-hmm.
I look at it from a purely biological or scientific process,
Mm-hmm.
and there's so much more information out there today. Dr. Mark Hyman speaks about this all the
Mm-hmm.
time. The leaky gut
Mm-hmm.
syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
Here's a story. We always like stories. Stories stick. When alcohol was given to dogs, I have a funny story with this one too. They immediately, what alcohol pokes holes in the gut lining.
Yep.
When they gave it to dogs, dogs immediately went into leaky gut right away. I told my husband this story. I said, you know what? I just learned about alcohol. I find this fascinating. Why we should eliminate alcohol, particularly when we get older and the gut microbiome shifts and we don't
Mm-hmm.
have the strength in our system. And I said they did this experiment where they gave alcohol to dogs, and they
You
immediately
say
went
this
into
as my
leaky
dog
gut.
is at my feet, so I can't wait to
Yeah.
hear.
Well, my husband turns to me and looks at me and he says, well, then don't give our dogs alcohol. So, Gavin, you're
Good
missing the
point.
point.
We'll make sure we take note of that.
But I found it very funny, but that sticks with me. So I'm using little tricks, and I try to teach women, use a little trick of a bad case scenario when you're confronted with something that is so tempting, whether it's sugar or alcohol. Try to remember some kind of reference that why you're trying to avoid it or to
Mm-hmm.
eliminate it.
Yeah.
The alcohol one really scares me, and I have eliminated it quite substantially, but there is still the odd time I'll have a beer with my husband.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that was fairly recently.
But
And,
you also
and
appreciate that moment, right? Because it's not all the time, and you're just going to savor it if you enjoy it and then move on. And I think that's like that to me is why when I love a glass of wine, it's if I'm just sitting and really savoring it because it's like Christmas, to be honest with you. You can't have Christmas all the time. You're not going to appreciate it.
yeah,
you know? And so I
yeah,
really savor the holiday season because it only comes once a year. And I know it's changing dramatically with my girls getting older. And so, I kind of look
yeah.
at alcohol in that same way. Um, it's not going to serve us to be able to do all the time. And we often just use it as, well, it's the holidays. It's a party. I can't not drink. And I'm like,
I can't
well,
not drink it. I
you
can't
could.
not sip this glass of champagne that's just been offered to me. I can't not have a mimosa Christmas morning. I
Yeah.
can't not have put Bailey's in my coffee. But it's one of those things like, okay, map it out. Here's the holidays, and how many functions are you going to go to? And
Yeah.
of those functions, how many are going to involve alcohol?
Yeah.
And can you pick one or two? If you're going to savor it, like you said, pick maybe one, maybe two, and then save yourself for that moment. It's like,
Yeah.
no, I don't want to have any alcohol during the holidays, but I will have that one glass of
Yep.
wine at Christmas dinner where I can
Hmm.
toast everybody else. I
Hmm.
might not even drink the whole thing, but
Yep.
I'm willing to have a sip or two.
Yep.
But do an experiment too. So when I had a beer recently, the next morning, well, that night, I went into a full on panic attack because it'd been a long time since I had
Wow.
beer, and hot flashes and night sweats
Yeah.
because I put my body at a homostasis.
Hmm.
It's already out of balance with menopause,
It
but
makes it easier to
I
say no to.
aggravated. I
Yeah.
further dysregulated it, and that feeling was horrible.
Hmm.
I like to tell my clients, write it down. Food
Yes.
journaling might be hard, but just write down the experience
Hmm.
and note it in your head, or take a mental note of it
Yep.
and remind yourself, how, in the moment when you're having it is great, but what's the long-term effect?
Yeah.
Are
I
you
often
setting
say
yourself up
vision, like you talk about vision casting. I'm like vision cast to 9 o'clock that next morning.
the
And
next morning?
how do you feel having had the drinks and how do you feel not having not had the drinks? So you can still respond based on a feeling, but make it the future feeling, not the moment feeling,
Yeah.
and see how we do. So that's my own strategy very
And
often.
it's a very effective strategy.
Mm.
And this is another mindset thing we need to wrap our heads around, is that experiment, notice that when you have that little bit of wine, and it doesn't take much as we get older,
Right.
and that if you're experiencing a hot flash, if you don't often experience them, but you have some nights where you big hot flashes, night sweats, big experience, and it's unusual, or they come on stronger, always note, what did I eat or what did I consume or did I have alcohol within that last 24 to 72 hours? Because sometimes it can take up to 3 days to manifest in our body. As our gut microbiome shifts, it's not as resilient. So
Mm-hmm.
that side effect will show up a lot faster, and
Mm-hmm.
note it. And again, back to what we said earlier, this is your body's way of saying, listen,
Hey.
pay attention to me. This
Yes.
is not good for you.
Yes.
And
It's like we do
let's,
these things, and then when we wonder why we have these side effects, and then we get frustrated and we think it's menopause's fault. And I'm thinking, yeah, but there's all these strategies that we could give you, and I promise it will be better. I promise, promise, promise. But like
yes,
we
yeah,
want it easier, we don't want to have to. I talk about the discipline of declining. We don't want to have to decline the things that don't serve us. But gosh, you're always giving up something to get something, and I think what you get out of the some things that we actually shift is so worth it. That's what
it's
wisdom is, to your point.
it's so worth it. And it's goal setting too. What is most important? What are my priorities?
Hmm.
If you're still working, to be able to show up at
Yeah.
work and be able to manage my menopause symptoms, yes, but
Yeah.
to be cognitively acutely aware, engaged, to be able to mentally do my job and not be tired or
Yeah.
brain fog or
Yeah.
confused. And that
Perfect.
goes back to the protocols. Look at your protocols. Start with your food. Then the next one would be get your cortisol levels down.
Hmm.
They're going to be continuing to spike as the body tries to find its new normal, its new balance of the hormone shifts. But there
Yep.
are things that you can do to help it along the way. And that is like fueling our gut with food. We
Hmm.
need to fuel our mind
Hmm.
with our thoughts.
Yep.
Thoughts are fuel for our emotional well-being, our emotional body,
I
even our
love that.
energetic body.
Yeah.
So how do you shift your thoughts? Because when we're in menopause, oftentimes we go to the lack of confidence, low self-esteem. So then we just self-sabotage. It becomes more heightened. We compare, we just go down, we just spiral down this role of this
Yes.
mindset of negativity. And if you've had any past traumas, it will come to surface, because this is another
Hmm.
Ayurvedic principle: is menopause is the time of the great reveal.
Oh,
So something you haven't dealt with physically, emotionally, a past injury, a past trauma, a childhood trauma, menopause will bring it to the surface. But welcome it in such ways. Here's an opportunity for me to become wise with it, to step
yes.
into it, find out what was that lesson I needed to learn, or what was that energy I need to let go of, so I can move forward and be my best self for my next 20, 30 years.
It's really
And
this beginning of a deeper level of self-awareness.
a
And who
very
wouldn't be?
deeper.
I mean, that's exciting.
So many women step into spirituality, and spiritual
Mm,
development is such on the rise. And the biggest demographic that's leaning towards that is women in their 40s and 50s and 60s,
yeah.
um,
Yeah.
trying to
Well, that
figure out
makes
who we are.
sense. Yeah, it
Yeah.
really makes sense. I think I always say self-consciousness is a disease, and I think that's what's happening to us when we're in our like 20s and 30s. And unfortunately, because we haven't really been taught about how to be more self-aware, we still stay in this this cyclone of self-consciousness. But it's self-awareness that's health. And all
Yeah.
of these things that you're talking about are just forcing us to become more self-aware. I mean, from inviting this time in our life to recognizing that it's an opportunity to have the wisdom that we didn't have before, and to know that there are things we have to accept and there are things we have to do to be able to
Hmm.
make this the best season of our life. So,
Yeah.
my gosh, this is amazing. Mary, you are truly like, I think this is my
Mm.
first real true encounter with a menopause doula. I love it.
We're few and far between, but there's more. There's more of us
Yes.
coming.
So I love this. So people can find you on your podcast. Go look up the Menopause Disruptor and know that every time I listen to her on her podcast that you're just this like, I don't, how do I say this? Like calm force.
Oh,
And
thank
your
you.
energy is calming to listen to. I want to listen more because I know the next thing you're going to say is even more insightful than the last thing you just said.
Yeah.
But you're also not afraid to swear.
Oh gosh, no.
which I really like. I appreciate. That's the
Hell no.
unapologetically us that I appreciate so much. So we'll put in the show notes all of Mary's information so you can connect with her. Make sure you go check out her podcast because it's filled with inspiration and strategies, ideas, and stories.
Hmm.
Stories from her own
Hmm.
life and
Yeah.
lives of her client. Mary, thank you so much for being here. I love every second of it, and we are going to crush the holidays.
Yes, we are. Remember who you want to show up as, and then just stick to those goals. And you know what? Don't beat yourself up if you have a faux pas. That's okay. Remember, because you're fueling your body with good food, but you've got to fuel your mind with good thoughts. So if you have a fallback over the holidays, just say, okay, I've learned from that, and then move on and be kind to yourself.
Yes, I love that. The real habit is getting back up when you do fall off, not never falling off.
Just say,
So
you're human, but you've got this. You got this.
perfect. Mary, you're the best. I can't wait to have you back on. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I'd love to. Okay, thank you.